Hello. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Casey and this is my channel, and this is where I talk about real life experiences here on earth that are relatable by way of spiritual concepts. And I use my interesting brain to give a different perspective on some things that are going on in people's lives. So this is a two-part series. The first series I did was, or the first video that I did was on schizophrenia, the spiritual perspective of schizophrenia and what it means for the soul on a soul level, as well as I did talk a little bit about psychosis in that video as well. So then I decided I would do another side of the trauma aspect, which is the maladaptive side of trauma. So all trauma, any kind of trauma that we experience in our lives, whether it be near-death experience or something that causes us to feel like we might be dying, or just any kind of trauma in our lives, sometimes it can be as real as like a heartbreak. And so in the last video, I don't have these sticky things sticking up on my hair. The last video that I spoke about the astral body. And I spoke about how when you have trauma, you have a traumatic experience, there can be a crack in the astral body. That is what some would call psychosis. So yes, this is something that can happen. You can have a crack in your astral body. If somebody was to look at your astral if they were to look at your aura after you had a post-traumatic or a traumatic event, or if you had been, say, diagnosed with PTSD, they would see probably a crack in your astral body. The reason why is because these are events that floor us and cause us to feel like we might need to go ahead and prepare for death. And so sometimes we will get prepared for death, and that means opening something in our astral body in order to let the soul out. It's not a fun way to look at things, but sometimes that's what is occurring. So in something called psychopathy, what we know about psychopaths, sociopaths, and your run-of-the-mill narcissists, all of the antisocial personality disorders, which focus on I'm not going to give their characteristics here because I don't want to delineate one trauma from another, and I don't want to call people out for the way that they deal with their own traumas, because that's what our society is doing right now. That's what's causing a lot of the gender wars and issues right now, is people don't know how to empathize with others. And so I'm not going to call out the person that has any of those traits, because the truth of the matter is that we've all had at some point, maybe not psychopathy, but at least narcissism. We've at least been at some point self-absorbed enough and unhealthy enough that we are displaying traits of narcissism. This is all because of trauma. Now, in sociopathy and psychopathy, these are your, like, on a spectrum level, right? You have the light triad, which is autism, ADHD, and I think bipolar. Those are the three light triads. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have the dark triad. The dark triad is the way that most masculine trauma victims cope. So the most masculine trauma victims will pull to the dark triad and not the light triad. Most trauma victims that are women are going to pull to the light triad. Hopefully. Not always. So when you have someone that is walking around without the ability to feel and without the ability to have empathy for others, this is a soul illness. So I'm going to say it one more time because what they do is so hard for us to understand that it's not evil. But I'm going to explain it one more time. The people that present transiently, hopefully, and they hopefully come out of it, as sociopaths and psychopaths and narcissists are temporarily walking around without their soul. What does that mean? So when your soul, when you experience trauma, which I explained in the first video and all that, when you're experiencing trauma, or when you have experienced trauma, again, there is a crack in your astral body. So a lot of times what happens with people who are sociopaths or psychopaths is that the body is vacant. The soul has left, the body is vacant. There is a very serious lack of identity around people that have suffered trauma. A blunt effect, like they don't feel anything. They even don't feel anything, like they have a very hard time empathizing with others or putting themselves in other people's shoes. And the egoic mind in a psychopath or sociopath is what is taking over for that trauma. So instead of like the schizophrenic or the person that's experienced transient psychosis, instead of them, they are kind of honest with themselves. They're like, they've let their ego go. Actually, there is ego death there. The people that experience trauma from a realm of ego and not humility are going to present as sociopaths or psychopaths. So what this means is that instead of like being humble and like being taken by the trauma, they will create negative and false facades to cover their weaknesses, because for whatever reason they were taught that they didn't deserve to have feelings, and so they cover them and they cover them. And inside of a psychopath is a person, it actually, what it is when you're speaking of transient psychopathy or transient sociopathy, you're speaking of a person that has their soul actually, because of all the trauma, it's left their body. And so this is the operating facade. This is the operating system. But that's all you're gonna get. Like, there isn't anything else down here because they can't. There's nowhere to go. This is it. Like, this is the surface. Is all there is. So this can happen for a variety of reasons. It can happen because of heartbreak. It can happen because of trauma, fear of death, whatever, near-death experiences, you name it. Trauma delivers things to people and disorders to people in varying ways. And in some ways it's good, and in some ways it's bad for society. So psychopathy is a vacant body, or sociopathy is a vacant body whose soul has left the body. This means that they go forth in life without feeling, without empathy, without the ability to connect, without the ability to love or connect to another person. Their heart is closed. Their heart is shut down. There's a fortress. You ain't getting through that. That is a sociopath. That is a psychopath. Because it is as scary as schizophrenic and as scary as psychopathy sounds. I'm sorry, as scary as psychotic breaks sound. The truth is that those are actually sometimes easier to heal from. Sociopath is going to maintain their lifestyle, but they're going to lose the sense of feeling for others. It's like the rubber band that just got stretched just way too much. And now that rubber band just doesn't, it has no flexibility. I mean, it's just wiggling. It's just wiggling in the wind. That is what a sociopath is. But they're still operating. They still have to continue. They still have to pay their bills. They still have to move on in life. And so instead of, going completely psychotic and becoming fearful, the ego mind takes over. The ego becomes the prime and central operation for the body. Where does the soul go? Well, the soul of a psychopath or sociopath is kind of like probably hanging out up here. It's not really, it could be here, it could be here, it could be in the body still, but they've shut it off. They don't want to hear from their soul. They don't want to hear from their higher consciousness, because that's where all the pain came from. And so this is their coping mechanism, is to switch into a reptilian brain pattern, which is totally real, of just kind of moving over into the dark side. Essentially, just be, it's kind of like that idea of, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So with a psychopath or a sociopath, the best way to bring them back is through heart connections, a pet, an animal that nobody else wants, or a sweet little whatever, like a little something for them to take care of, even if it's just a plant, a fish. Start small, because all of these things are going to build their heart back up. They're eventually going to start to connect to something, whether it's, God, I forget the movie. It was a movie about an old curmudgeon, and it was Jack Nicholson, and he was like this old dude. He had this like dog that would come see him. I forget that movie, but that is your typical, that's your typical narcissist that's gone cold and doesn't know how to connect to his heart anymore. But then that dog came along, right? And it changed his life. So I always like to, when I speak about sociopathy and psychopathy and like disassociation, not from reality, but from the heart and the heart center and the soul, I always suggest to people to get a pet. Getting the smallest little thing to take care of, because it's going to force those heartstrings to grow stronger and stronger and stronger again, because the band, the rubber band has just like popped. So it's forcing that heart muscle to move. It's forcing your heart center to grow and activate again and become connected to other people. And so this is why I love to talk about personality disorders, because all of this personality disorder crap and all of these labels, it stems from trauma. Even schizophrenia stems from trauma. And so it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing to see people move into their heart. And it's like I get tears when I think about it, because I get tears because I've seen the other side of things, and I've seen what trauma can do to a person, how it can make them cold and turned off and hurtful to others. And so when I look at like all of this stuff that I was even a part of, when it comes to narcissists and, like just attack. And then I had like this amazing experience this summer that made me realize that we're all just freaking one. And it doesn't matter if somebody is a sociopath or a narcissist or whatever they are. The point is that everybody can come back home. That's the point. Everybody can come back home here, no matter what kind of trauma you have. And it moves me, man, because I know and I see what Christ and Christ's presence does in people's lives. And I can see that. I can see that in my own life. I can hold that that message of Jesus Christ like so dear here. And I don't want to turn anybody off because religion tends to trigger people. So I don't want to turn anybody off, but I really do have a very strong personal relationship with Jesus, and it's always been there, and there won't ever be anything that can change that. So that I'm not going to really speak on religion at all, but there is a person that is in my life still to this day that helps me. So even in the darkest of things like psychopathy, like psychopathy and sociopaths, and those really dark personality disorders, it's not even helpful to call something that, because all it is the way that they dealt with their stuff. So it's really helpful and really great when people can treat everything with love and meet people kind of like where they are, wherever they are at that moment. Just kind of keep showing them love, keep showing up in love to others repeatedly, over and over. Don't let your lower emotions get taken, because there are people out there. Narcissism is huge in this culture these days, and there's people out there that probably could snap out of it with your presence only and your love. So keep that in mind. That is my 2 cents on the soul aspect of psychopathy and sociopathy is that it is a process of the soul has been disassociated from the body itself, and when souls are disassociated from the body itself, it forces or can invite darkness. So that is also a spiritual issue. It will also obscure the moral compass. So thanks for listening, guys, and like my channel and subscribe. Bye.